We're okay. Now we are
There you
live
go.
for sure. All
That's the
right.
little pop-up we were waiting for.
It's actually real. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Twist Office Hours. Today, we're talking about building the future of work asynchronously, and we've got David here, the CEO of Chessable. I'm going to introduce him a little bit more. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit more in just a second. Really quickly, if this is your first time joining us for a Twist Office Hours or an Office Hours in general, these are basically live streams where we're talking to experts in certain areas around productivity, in this case, asynchronous communication and remote work, and all kinds of topics that relate to either Todoist or Twist. So we are currently talking about Twist today on the Twist channel. And so if you're watching on YouTube or on another platform, please go over and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get live updates when these come out. Today we've got David here from Chessable. We're right up the road from each other. I'm in Valencia, Spain, and he's up in Barcelona. If we haven't met yet before on one of these, my name's Chase Warrington. I'm the head of remote here at Doist, and I am one of the people that gets to fortunately host these office hours from time to time. So very excited about this one because as the head of remote, it's one of my jobs to nerd out on all things remote work and asynchronous communication. And that's exactly what David and I will get to do today. So David, welcome to Office Hours. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to have this chat.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll let you do a quick introduction of yourself if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your role, and what you guys do at Chessable.
Cool. So I've been building things for the internet since I was 14. So it's almost 20 full years now. And I've always had lots of fun doing it. So I think Chessable must be like the fifth or sixth thing I built. It's one of the better things I built, but certainly, I've been around just experimenting with technology, with products, with ways of collaborating together. I think at the very beginning, it was MSN Messenger we were using to communicate and coordinate. So that goes a long, long time back. Maybe some listeners don't even know what that is. But yeah, so Chessable is my latest venture, and it's been 6 years now, actually. And we started it in the UK, and being in the chess market, we always wanted to hire kind of people who were excited about chess. So we didn't want to limit ourselves to kind of like the vicinity of where we were. We wanted to really open it up to the best chess enthusiasts out there, best chess programmers. Some of them who could be in Australia or in California and New York, I don't know, Russia, you name it. So we, even back then in 2016, decided to adopt a remote first mentality and make it work that way as opposed to a kind of centralized office space. So I think we were ahead of the curve a few years, this remote working kind of culture. And of course, now everybody's doing it. So it's not so cool or so strange anymore. But yeah, hopefully those few extra years of experience meant that we were doing things a little bit better, maybe than we would have if it was new for us. Yeah, so I don't know how that is for an introduction, or if there's anything else you want to know.
Yeah, it's a perfect introduction. And so when you say in the chess market, what exactly is Chessable doing as a product or service, just to give people a little bit of potpourri around it?
Absolutely. So Chessable was born out of a need to improve at chess. And if you've ever played chess, I think it's super exciting and super fun to progress at the beginning, but it kind of gets harder the better you get. And the harder it gets, the more hours you need to put into it. And really, I didn't see an efficient or fun way to do this when I was exploring it. So I thought, why isn't anyone making this more fun, making this more efficient, just making sure that you complete the course that you set out to do, and then making sure that you actually remember what you studied when you go out and play chess. So that's exactly our mission at Chessable. We just want to make your chess improvements more fun, more efficient. And we do that via implementing concepts like gamification to provide a little bit of extra motivation. So, if you're feeling tired, you don't really want to do it, well, there will be little things in Chessable that encourage you and to put in that 10 minutes a day to keep engaged with studying chess. And then to make it more efficient, we actually implement concepts from science, like educational psychology, for example, to make sure that you're doing it as efficiently as possible. And the primary ingredient for that is something called spaced repetition. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept, but just to kind of briefly go over it, it's reviewing material with increasing intervals between the reviews. So if you know something well, you might look at it again in a month, maybe 3 months if you know it really well. But if you don't know it, then we might quiz you on it like 4 hours later or a day later, just to make sure that you're repeating this information in an optimal manner. So that's what Chessable is. And then just to add to that, we opened Chessable up as a platform to a lot of content creators, so that you'll see all kinds of different chess master and educators plugging into our system to teach their strategies, their openings with our method called Move Trainer.
Wow. It's so cool that you guys have built this platform on a game like chess that's been around for ages, but now has this kind of modern concept. And what makes it even more cool that we haven't touched on yet is that you guys are a fully distributed team. I think you've got around. Tell us a little bit about the team makeup and distribution globally.
So we used to be fully distributed, but at some point we got acquired by the Play Magnus Group, which is a chess company headquartered in Norway, and they're actually the world champions company. And at that point, we decided to try a hybrid model. We wanted to have a few key people in the vicinity, so especially senior management. So we set up an office in Barcelona. So I think historically, maybe for 3.5, 4 years, we were 20 people, 30 people, and then 40 people fully distributed. And then we kind of built out this office and became a hybrid model. So now we are maybe 40 people in Barcelona, and then 100 people around the world. Maybe like 20 in the UK, 30 in the Netherlands, some people in Germany, Russia, Poland, you name it. But yeah, now we do have this kind of central office, which changes things a little bit. Like anything in life has its trade-offs. A really positive thing is that now people are very keen to visit us and come and work from the office for a week or two, and then you get to meet your colleagues in a, I guess, more relaxed manner throughout the year, versus having like an offsite a couple times a year where everybody gets together at the same time. I think this way is a bit more manageable. And we're in Barcelona, so everybody always wants to visit.
Yeah, not a bad place to come visit. So that's okay. So that's perfect. So that gives us a great kind of overview of how you guys are structured. Like you've got people in Barcelona with sort of a central office, but if I understand it correctly, it's totally location agnostic, so to
Right.
speak. Like you don't have to come to the office. People can work from home or
That's
wherever they
correct.
like.
So we retain a remote first approach and a sync first approach. So nobody is obliged to come to the office, but we've adopted this hybrid model because some people want to come to the office, especially after a year of pandemic where we were all stuck at home. Some people miss that interaction at the office, maybe an after work event, some in-person chess. There's a human element that you cannot replace with technology just yet, and some people really want it. But yeah, I mean, everybody still takes their meetings remote first. So we have this very handy phone booths that you can see here, completely soundproof. So even though there is some office space out there, if you have a meeting, even if you have a meeting with somebody here, but there's one person who's remote, we will all go to separate booths and take the meeting remote first.
Wow. I love it. It's amazing all the things that have emerged to meet teams where they need to be met to make remote work comfortable for everyone. Something I forgot to mention early on that I just want to remind the audience before we continue. Feel free, whatever platform you're watching on, you can drop questions to us in the Q&A. You can tweet at us. You can drop them in the comments on YouTube, wherever you're watching from. Ask those questions. We've got someone that will filter those, and we'll get to Q&A at the end of the discussion here. So, and you mentioned that you guys are remote first and asynchronous first. So what is I think people probably understand what remote first means. What does asynchronous first mean for you guys at Chessable?
So asynchronous first has been something we've been doing since the beginning, and it was born for me personally out of this classic essay by Paul Graham called Maker's Schedule versus Manager's Schedule. So I think that kind of planted the idea of like interruptions are costly. And if you're like a developer, for example, you need time to concentrate. You don't want to have somebody asking for status updates every 15 minutes or, proposing ideas when you're supposed to be solving this complex challenge. So I've always been, for many, many years, like protecting my own attention. Like, if I'm going to coach, I'll put some music on, and for hours I'll just ignore everything else. So whenever we hired a tech team, we try to kind of put the same approach. Like, look, don't check your messages, don't check your email. We understand that you're developing, like you do it on your own time when you want to. And we kind of train our managers about the importance of this. Other than this essay, I actually also took a master's in psychology. So I came across a lot of scientific literature like that just goes over like undisputable evidence that these interruptions are like really damaging to our productivity, to our well-being. There's a perception that we should be good at multitasking, but actually, if you look at the latest neuroscience, it doesn't work in our brain. Like, it's just you kind of have to switch tasks, and there's a trade-off there. You might be good at multitasking, but you just have to understand that something else is kind of making way for that. And maybe that's productivity, maybe that's well-being, maybe that's increased stress, one of those things. So we always had this approach of async first. Like, if you get a message, you don't have to reply to it right away. Like, you don't have to show yourself to be online. What you have to do is deliver on what you sign up to deliver, right? So if it is code features, then we expect to see the results when you say they're going to be delivered, right? So if you say, look, this is going to get done in 2 weeks, then in 2 weeks, we expect you to deliver, because relationship is based on trust, right? So and communication. So of course, if something comes up and you communicate with us and you're like, hey guys, something came up, is going to be delayed by a week, then we'll understand. But it's all based on trust, honesty, transparency, and then it works, because we're all adults, and nobody wants to be kind of like checked up on like every hour, every few hours, and have status updates all the time. And we wanted to really move away from that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point about the the multitasking. Like, we totally tend to think that we're better multitaskers than we are, and we totally tend to give ourselves more credit for being able to focus than we actually can. And every time you get one of those little pings that notifies you, that sucks you out of deep work mode and back into chat mode, it not only kills you for that 15 seconds you take to respond. There's a ripple effect that happens after that. Getting back into the mode takes a lot longer than we think. Is that part of the mindset there as well?
Exactly. I mean, I think everybody, if you kind of pay attention to this, you will notice that sometimes you go onto, let's say your email to look up a piece of information that you need to complete a task that you're doing, right? And then all of a sudden you see a new message at the top and you get distracted. And I promise you that many, many of us will have experienced this, where we forget what it is that we were initially doing. And maybe that thing that you were doing initially was really important, and all of a sudden you forgot, you didn't complete it, you have to do it later. And that lost time is kind of like what scientists are calling the cost of switching. So that adds up. Like, maybe one little incident doesn't matter, but once you put them all together, then it really adds up and it costs. I'm not going to dispute that there's some really good multitaskers out there, but even those really good multitaskers, like, they haven't compared their outputs versus what would their output be if they weren't multitasking, or maybe how stressed it would be if they weren't multitasking. It's very hard to kind of measure, and I think we're living a day and age where everybody is kind of like, I don't know, maybe a little bit addicted to this multitasking. I don't know if you could call it a myth, but phenomenon for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes us feel like we're doing something. It gives you that sense of like the old way of working was, not really that old, but like the old way of working was sort of like clocking in and clocking out, and being present gives you a lot of credit. You got 80% of the work done just by being present, and we work in a way that says you actually get zero credit for just showing up and just being present. We don't care if you're present or if you're quick to respond. What we care about is that deliverable that you said you would get to us in 2 weeks. And all the emphasis goes on that in an asynchronous environment, I think.
Exactly. I think that's correct. And I mean, it goes, I want to go back to this essay by Paul Graham, like maker's schedule versus manager's schedule, because I think if you're a manager, then of course you're going to have more interruptions. Of course, you're going to have more people coming to you and asking for things. So it's natural to expect a bit more multitasking and a bit kind of less focus. But we really have to be kind of mindful of who needs that focus and give it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of rules do you rules might not be the right word, but rules or norms, kind of cultural norms within the company do you have that help keep this async infrastructure standing?
Yeah. So in terms of rules, I don't think as human beings we're good at following rules to change behavior. That's a very hard way of going about it, because if you're used to something, you'll end up breaking the rule, and then you might feel bad, or you might have to talk to your manager or your colleagues. In my personal opinion, that's not a very good way to go about like setting the stage. So I really believe in kind of changing the environment and designing our environment to facilitate behaviors, which is why, for example, we have these booths here. It's soundproof. They're very comfortable. So, you no longer have to kind of struggle and be like, where do I get some space to make sure I can have this call? No, there's a booth here. People come in. Sometimes they come in even when they don't have a call, just to get some quiet time. So it's about designing the environment. And for that, like, that's why we chose Twist, right? If we used to use Slack, and if you use Slack, then there's a few things about the user experience there, about the design of that product, that kind of encourage you to reply quickly, encourage you to make sure you're present. Like the little green dot just generates anxiety. It's like, is my dot green? Like, people see that I'm online, that kind of thing. Like, we don't want that, because that's the kind of design that leads to the outcomes that we don't want. So in terms of designing our online environment, instead of setting rules, we chose Twists. And then when people are onboarding, we explain to them like, hey, look, here's a couple articles. If you're interested about why we chose Twist and why we're trying to communicate in this way, then you might want to read this. Or if you trust us and you like it anyway, then don't read it. But like, the logic is there, the explanation is there, and people kind of exploring their own time the why. So I think explaining the why and designing the environment is maybe a better way than setting rules.
I agree with you. Yeah, 100%. That's a really smart way to go about it. And for anybody listening, it's just very simple. There's one rule. You just need twist, and and then you can go from there. I do agree with your point. Like, people will ask me often, like, well, what's the difference between Twist and Slack? Like, technically, can't they both be used asynchronously? And I would say, yeah, like they technically can be used asynchronously. It's just that one lends itself better to asynchronous communication, pure
Yeah,
asynchronous communication, than the other. And it's a lot of it's for what's not there. It's not so much about some of the features that are there, but the features that aren't there, like the little green dot, presence
exactly.
indicators, read receipts, things like this that make you feel like you should be connected, and therefore kind of entice this culture of like, hey, I'm here, I'm around, that's good. And you're trying to entice a different culture, which I love.
Exactly. So it's kind of like going back to this smart defaults, smart settings of your tools. Like, maybe you can use Slack in a way that facilitates a sync, but like, you might have to tweak a whole bunch of settings. Some of those settings might not exist, and then you might have to get your entire team to change their settings, which with 150 people, I don't know, that's not easy to do. Like, you have to keep banging on about the rules. Hey guys, these are the rules. Don't do that. Don't do that. And nobody wants that. Like, so yeah, I do think Twist is a really good product for that. I'm a big fan. That's why I'm here. Being a big fan for years now. Super excited about a new Twist. But we used to use Slack, and don't get me wrong. Like, for a small team, it wasn't an issue. Like, it worked well for us in a small team. But even as a manager who's used to distractions, like, once we scaled beyond a certain point, it just was a nightmare, because I couldn't find out what was important and what wasn't. It was just like, and red dot here, and red dot here, scroll through this, scroll through that. Oh, here's a little thread, going through it to make sure you didn't miss something. And it's not out of FOMO, but it's out of like trying to know, am I needed here? And that was just impossible to do with like 50, 60 people. And it kept getting worse. So it was really kind of like a senior manager decision. People who had like, I don't know, 20, 30 people under them, we felt that first. We're like, we're going crazy here. All we're doing is we're on Slack the whole day, and we didn't want that. So after making the change, I mean, Twist has this really handy feature called the inbox, right? Where you see everything with a nice title and a little preview of what it is. And then you can very quickly click on it and be like, is this relevant? Do people need me here? And if not, you just mark it as done and you move on. And it's so easy to do. And of course, because it's Twist, you don't have to deal also with a kind of spam emails. If you go to your email, you kind of have an inbox there too, but there the problem is like spam, 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 promotion, email that's relevant. In Twist, you don't have that. So it really helps you get a kind of a quick lay of the land, like where am I needed, who needs my help, who needs my input, and who doesn't, and you can just get it done super quick.
Yeah, and how do you guys manage, like, coming back, like, not really a rule so much, but like in Doist, for instance, something that we are really mindful of is like who we're notifying, and that's something else that Twist really facilitates. I had someone, a leader at another remote company that I was talking with last week, who didn't realize that we weren't on Slack, like sort of just the
Yeah,
assumption that, oh, you guys are a remote team, you're on Slack, didn't know our backstory and connection to Twist. And
yeah,
anyway, they were saying, what drives me crazy is I have to read through these channels and threads because there's a notification there that says a
right.
comment was made, but I don't know if it's for me or someone else. And so I spend a lot of time scrolling. So
But
for us with Twist, you could have that same problem in Twist if you just over notify everybody. But we're very mindful about who we notify, and
yeah,
that cuts down on this replication of notification. So do you guys put any emphasis on this?
I mean, so for us, the way we manage it is the right people in the right channel. Like, don't join a channel if like there is no need for you to be there, and that even goes for me, right? Like, I mean, if I don't want to see threads from, I don't know, some sort of, let's say, social events that are happening, then I'll leave. But then if I'm feeling social, maybe I'll come back.
Mhm.
And it's the same, like if you have to be in the customer support and you're talking about customer support issues, like I don't necessarily have to be in that channel, right? And then when people post there, we already assume that you have self-filtered yourself out of the channels you don't want to be in. And if you have done that, then everything you get in your inbox should be relevant, right? um, I can give you another example. So for example, let's say our DevOps is running super well, right? And there's nothing new happening there, just like the random thing. Then maybe I will be there just to like make sure that's the random thing I get, and I quickly check in 10 seconds, should I say something, should I not? But if they're actively developing it and they're talking about let's do this, let's do that, there's a new topic here, new topic there, then maybe I'll leave because those guys are better at those than I am. So I don't need to be there. I don't need to get those threads. But again, about the problem you're talking about, I'll go back to the inbox. Like it's actually super handy. It gives you like a very quick overview. It is not like in Slack where you have to like go into the channel to actually know what's going on. You never have to go into a channel if you don't want to. You just go to your inbox and you get a quick overview, and you can just mark it as like, is this for me? Is this not for me? And I think that's worked super well for me
Awesome.
after
Very,
the entire
very
team.
good to know. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, Something I found interesting is that both of our teams transitioned from Slack to Twist. So I'm curious if you have any advice about that transition for, we've probably got people on here who are leaders of
Yeah.
their own teams and maybe considering the same transition. What advice might you give them about that transition?
Um, that wasn't an easy transition, if I'm honest. And what I did was try and win over some key managers who also were experiencing the problems. So I spoke to them about how Twist addresses exactly those problems. So, feeling overwhelmed or feeling like I'm on Slack the whole day and I'm not really getting any real work done. So once we had some of those key managers on board, then those managers were able to explain to the teams why we're making the change, because humans are a little bit averse to change once they get used to something. And then you kind of have to divide and conquer in a way, like win 5 people over, and then hope that those people can at least kind of soften the minds of the people under them in the organization in the change, so that it's not entirely top down. But once we did that, we shared a lot of literature and a lot of the why. Why are we doing this? It's not just for us, it's also for you. And then we checked in with people again a few weeks later and say, look, how's it going? Do you like the change? And actually most people really learned the product very quickly and really enjoyed it. And after a month or two, it just became history. Like everybody knows we use Twist now, everybody likes it, and everybody actually loves the new Twist. So
Nice. Yeah, something I'll add on to that is what we kind of we've written a lot about this, how we sort of quit cold turkey from Slack. Like there was a kill Slack day, and we
yeah,
just migrated over to Twist, and that was it. Now it was a little bit easier because we've been building it in the background and using it a little bit, but it was sort of like all right, this is the whatever the date was, we're moving on. And something that helped us a lot with that transition was adding links to things. So we would just kind of say, like in Slack, for instance, migrating this conversation to this thread in Twist, for instance, and then, or once the thread started in Twist, this conversation originated in Slack. Here's a little bit of context, or here's a little bit of background on what we were discussing beforehand. So I think that can be useful. I've heard that replicated with other teams, and it's a nice one to utilize if you're making that switch.
Yeah, I mean, we did the same thing actually. Like we just agreed that we're making the move, and at the beginning of a specific week, we were all on Twist, and we didn't kind of fully kill Slack in that day, but like if you're on Slack, you knew that nobody's going to reply to you, and then the managers would go over and be like, "Hey, why are you still on Slack? Can you move over, please? Can you move over, please?" And then within a couple of weeks, everybody moved over because they realized that the people they need to communicate with, they're not checking Slack anymore. So it was a bit less black and white, but hopefully that works for others.
Nice. One other thing I'm really curious about, because you're the CEO of the company. I mean, you are, for better or worse, people look up to you and kind of follow your actions. And I think the way you can say all day, like, let's use Twist, or I use Twist, I work asynchronously. But then there are those leaders who say one thing and do another. They're always available. They respond immediately. They kind of exhibit a different behavior than they're trying to get their teammates to do, or that they think they want to, the kind of ethos that they think they want to stick to. So how do you, as a leader, kind of exemplify the async first mindset?
Yeah, so I think it's super important to lead by example, and also kind of I guess give honest feedback when you see somebody not following that example. So now there's been occasions where I've asked like managers reporting to me to stop being so available. Like, hey, if you're taking a holiday, take your holiday. If you're taking a break, take a break. I want to see you disconnected. So it is important to be open about that, have that conversation, and show that it's important to you. So, if I take a day off, I am not checking my messages, and people know that. So super important to lead by example, I think, not just in a transition to Twist, but I think in any sort of leadership position. That's my ethos, and I think it's worked well for this move to async.
Nice. Very cool. One question that we've got is, what is your expected response time? Like when you say asynchronous communication, is that 1 hour, 24 hours a week? Do you have any expectations around response time?
I think 24 hours is okay, because people can set aside 15 minutes a day to come and check their messages. So I think that is kind of like the unsaid rule, because we didn't set any specific standards. If a developer came to us and said, "Look, I was stuck in the code for 3 days and I completed this," or then it'll be fine, because there is no hard rule that, hey, you got to reply to us within a day. But I think most people work on that basis. And again, it really depends on the role. Like if your role is in HR, you're probably going to reply to us in a few hours or quicker. I think it's kind of have to kind of remain flexible on that one. I wouldn't set a specific time.
Nice. Yeah, that's good to know. Like at Doist, our unspoken rule, I guess. I don't know if I should say it's unspoken. I guess we kind of all understand it, but like it's 24. We expect 24 hours, and often I get a response much quicker than that. Like people think like, oh my God, you have to wait for 24 hours for each response. But no, it's generally the same day. It's within an hour or even quicker. But the idea is that when I put the message out there, I'm operating under the idea that I won't get a response within 24 hours. So that means I need to move on to something else, which is an important part of making async work, I think.
No, exactly. And I mean, we do have like situations like if something's urgent, which doesn't happen often, but let's say once a month, something truly is urgent and you need it right then people might, give me a call. Like, and then I'll see, hold on a second, this person who reports to me is actually calling me. It must be something urgent. It must be something important. And I'll aim to pick up and say, hey, look, what's going on? Let's get on a call and solve it, right? So that does happen. But then people know to use that method of communication when something's truly important versus something that actually can't wait, and you can switch into something else while you wait.
That's a good segue actually to another question that we've got here. So what emphasis do you place on meetings is the gist of the question. So I guess where do you fall on this spectrum of completely asynchronous meetings are toxic, we never want to do them, and the other end of the spectrum being like we have to make a meeting to talk about the meeting that we're going to plan the meeting? Where are you guys on this?
So I think we're somewhere on that scale. We don't fall on either side, and I think actually most things in life are better that way when you kind of have a balanced view rather than polarize yourself. So we do have meetings, but they have to have a purpose and they have to have the right people in the meeting. And honestly, we'll kill a meeting if it's just pointless, and the managers know that. So yeah, as long as there's a purpose and a clear outcome, then we'll take the meeting.
Yeah. Would you say there's a tendency though to lean asynchronous and use a meeting sort of as a medium to last resort, or the other way around?
I wouldn't say a meeting is the last resort, but I would think that people know they have to be careful about booking a meeting. So it's kind of like, everybody else who's joining the company is coming from a world where everything's a meeting, right? So
Yeah.
it's going to take time to fully change that, and make sure that people who are used to everything is fully async. So we're not trying to stop them from having meetings completely. What we're just trying to do is give out guidelines like, look, the meeting has to be useful. The right people have to be in the meeting room. You should take some notes and share them around afterwards so people know what happened in the meeting and why it was taken. And then we have managers help the people who work on their team kind of understand if they're having the right amount of meetings. And
Right.
actually, I think most of our meetings are one-to-ones, which I do think you need a meeting for. You, I think having this kind of face-to-face exchange is always better than a few DMs. So we
Yeah.
really encourage meetings for one-to-ones.
Agreed. Yeah, totally. We lean very lightly on meetings, but for one-to-ones, personal matters, connecting with your direct reports, it's vital. At least on some cadence for sure. We're getting up here. We're already at over half an hour, so I'm gonna wrap it up here with just a couple more questions really quickly. Let me see here. So what when people say there's some things that are kind of connected to this. So when people say that asynchronous is slow, how do you respond to that? I know personally I hear that a lot. I don't know if you do as well. Like it's sort of like a contestment against async, but do you tend to see it as slower, or how? I don't know. How do you respond to that?
I mean, if you're saying it's slow, you should kind of show some metric, I guess, that it measures it, because otherwise maybe it's just a perception of being slow. And I mean, if it's a perception, then it's like perceptions are in our head, right? So I don't know if there's any true data out there that shows that it's slow.
So
I don't
you
know if
don't
you
feel that?
I don't feel that at all. I mean, I feel like we get plenty of work done, and people are not blocked, and people are happy and productive. So I have never felt that. I've never heard that actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would challenge anybody who thinks it's slow to show some data actually. So
I want to bring you with me to some of these conversations I have with people who
yeah,
bring this up, because I think the idea is that what somebody will say is, okay, we have this one singular problem and it's just much faster if we can get our whole team together in a conference room and just solve it right there. And that's the basis for their argument. And I
yeah,
would agree that if that is the one case you're talking about, then yeah, that could probably be done faster than in an asynchronous environment. But the idea in an async environment, I would argue, I'm curious if you agree, is that you have multiple initiatives going on at any given time. So when you're blocked on one, you can pivot to something else very quickly. And three or four or five initiatives are moving along in
yeah. I
that
mean,
same time frame.
it really depends what team you're on, right? So, for example, we have a team that runs live streams, and they're on Slack. Like they have to communicate about the live stream in real time, like, right. But then there are teams like the developers, for example, who don't need to have all these interruptions. They're never on Slack. Like they're never on meetings. They have maybe a couple stand-ups a week, a sprint planning. So they have 3 meetings every 2 weeks. So
Right.
you go from somebody who's in meetings all the time to somebody who's almost never in meetings. So I think has to be looked on a case by case basis. What's the company? What's the task? There is no like one single solution for everybody out there.
Yeah. Even within Doist, where we don't lean on meetings very much, different teams use them in different ways. We have some teams that have a weekly stand-up, some that have a monthly, some that have none.
Exactly.
And so this is just depends on the distribution of the team. Some of them it doesn't make any sense because they're so distributed across the globe. It's like it would make no sense. But that I think is key. Is making sure that they work for the teammates on the team and making sure that someone isn't left out or gets a different experience than the rest. So we have some people that are very curious about the number of meetings you have in an average week. We'll move on from meetings right after this, but can you guesstimate? Do you have 1, 5, 10, 20?
No, I have a lot, but I mean, I'm a bad example because I'm the ultimate leader of the organization, say, so, and I do skip level meetings, and I've just said to you that one-on-ones you have to have a meeting about, right? So I'll have a meeting not only with the people reporting to me, but also with the people reporting to them, and I will be constantly like optionally invited to, let's say, a few other meetings that are happening. So on an average week, I probably had, I don't know, 20 meetings.
20. So you're in 4 or 5 a day.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good for people to know. I mean, you are, and the buck does sort of stop with you, so you're involved in even more than your direct reports.
And we're 150 people, right? So like then if you look at somebody who's a developer, for example, like I said just now, they'll be in 3 meetings, maybe 4 a week, and usually we try to make sure they're in the same day and in the same morning. If you can, so that they have the least possible amount of meetings a week, and then you might be on a team where you have like no meetings 1 week and then a couple of meetings the other week, right? So it is a spectrum, and I think what's important is to have this culture of understanding that people are not available like at your beck and call, right? You cannot just like decide, hey, we have this issue, we should get everybody together. No, they might be doing something really important, and you should give them the space to complete their work and respect their time. And I think, and that's where we are coming from.
Yeah. That's one of the major cheat codes of asynchronous work, I think, is like, it gives people the ability to disconnect, the lack of they miss the FOMO of like needing to be addicted to their device, but then also like crafting your own workday, right? Like creating the workday that works for you and feeling comfortable doing that. I mean, if every single employee gets to work in their most productive hours of the day, like that supercharges the team's overall productivity. So it's very, very amazing to hear how you guys have built the organization. Last question here. We'll wrap up. We're already over time a little bit, but as far as just some general advice you might give to a leader out there who's looking to make the switch to an async environment, it could be to using Twist, but just even more broadly talking about asynchronous communication, what advice could you possibly lend them about migrating to an async environment?
I would say there's plenty of great material out there that they can read. I think starting with Paul Graham's Maker Schedule versus Manager Schedule is a good one. I know some people haven't read it yet, so I try and point people that way to explain the importance of giving people space to complete their work. Of course, we have weareasync.com, which also has great material. So just read up on that. And then if you decide to make the switch, I think the first value that you have to bring to an async culture is trust. Trust that your colleagues are here to do meaningful work. Nobody's signing up to a job to just sit around and sit on their hands. So they're here to deliver, and you have to give them the space to deliver. Every now and then you'll find some people who don't deserve your trust, and for those people I say, look, take the probation time seriously, because async is not for everybody. We have had people in Chessable who aren't made for async, so then you have to be honest with them and say, look, you don't fit into our culture, and try and find somebody who does, because I think trust is the key component here from both parts.
100% agree. And it's a word that's like thrown around a lot, right? Like it's easy to say in any organization, oh, we have to have trust, but like in an asynchronous remote environment, it is so vital, and it has to be like, trust has to be implemented very intentionally. I think you have to really work towards establishing the fact that everybody has trust. You don't need to follow up with people. You're going to set an expectation, and people are going to deliver it, and people are adults, and they'll more often than not make it happen. And especially you don't need to put a lot of emphasis on surveillance and like monitoring people's. I've heard about mouse trackers and things like this. You don't have to go down this road. I think this is a common fallacy as well.
Yeah,
So
if you go down that path, then you have people who automate their mouse movements and automate keystrokes, and it's like that is not a path anybody wants to go down.
no, not a productive path for anybody. Most of all, you, the one trying to track it.
Yeah.
This is perfect. I think it's a great way to wrap it up on the trust factor. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, but David, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy, so we really appreciate it. Thank you for being a Twist customer and for sharing your story here today.
Thank you also, and keep up the great work.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel to the Twist Office Hours series and also to Doist Office Hours series while you're there. We'll have more of these coming out over the coming weeks, especially focusing on new Twist that just launched recently. Thanks again. We'll see you guys soon.